Okay, today we're going to talk about headaches. And if you don't take anything else out of this, at least we have the American flag up here so you can enjoy that view the whole time. All right, headaches. What causes them and what kind do you have? A lot of times people will hear things like, oh, I have migraines. I've been told that I have to take medication for migraines. It's my tension that's doing it, whatever it might be. But there are three typical headaches you might get. Cervicogenic is the first kind, CGH, and it comes from impairments in the neck. So your cervical vertebrae, C1 through 7, typically the upper cervical vertebrae, C1, 2, they're the highest, back right up underneath of the skull, and have something called the trigeminocervical nucleus, which actually relays pain over the head. So that's why if you have a cervicogenic headache, a lot of times you'll have one-sided suboccipital, which means it's coming from this area and then relays over to the forehead. So a lot of times they'll have what's called a ram's horn headache, and people will say that pretty frequently. They feel like there's issue back here and then it comes and wraps up around there. It can be made worse with positional and activity related. So if you sit at a desk all day and your head is forward, that kind of thing, it'll make it worse and it might bring your headache on. So that is the first one. Around 15 to 20% of people have headaches and get headaches, so just less than a quarter, actually are cervicogenic in nature and not related to tension or migraines. Another thing with cervicogenic, whenever somebody has sensitive to light or sensitive to noise, they automatically assume that it's because of a migraine, and that's not necessarily. There was a study in 2004 that showed that cervicogenic headaches can actually cause issues with vision, sensitive to light, and those kind of things that are typically thought to be with migraines. Migraines are going to be brought on. They actually don't really know. It could be environmental, it could be hereditary, just a strange stimulus that causes it. And if anybody's had a migraine, you basically want to go to the nearest hospital because it's miserable. Medication seems to be the best thing, but I'll explain something else that might be as equally effective as medication for migraines. When it comes to PT and what you can do for yourself, usually cervicogenic and then the other is tension type that we're going to touch on more, are the two that PT can help the most and that you can do the most for yourself. Tension type. This is common. People will say that they feel tension causes their headache, and that is usually going to be a pressure tightness feeling if you have it, and it'll relay behind the eyes. And people say that frequently. They feel like it's back there, like a deep pressure in their temples and behind their eyes. It could start and relay forward, or it could just be that it is mainly around the eyes. And bilateral, which means it is both sides. 66 to 86% prevalence in people, so it's definitely the most common headache. And real quick with this one, this guy right here in 2005 found 86% of people in the superior obliquus muscle have serious issues with that if they have headaches. And I just want to show you what that is. So here's the back of your skull. This right here is the superior obliquus. So whenever you grip the back of your head underneath of your skull and try to get that pressure in there, that's what you're trying to go for. And I'll explain more the importance of that in a little bit. But those are the muscles that are usually affected most, the cervicogenic and tension type, those muscles there. So what can you do for it? For the sake of this discussion, manipulation is going to be equivalent to adjustment. So if you think of an adjustment where you get your neck cracked, that's what I'm talking about. And dry needling can kind of be similar to acupuncture, but not technically. So for all of these, you will find trigger points. People talk about trigger points in their traps, up in here, in their back, anywhere like that. Trigger points, muscle trigger points, you will think of tension headaches a lot, but also could be cervicogenic and migraines. So if you can work on trigger points, even though you have a migraine that you think you can only take medications, sometimes if you can release trigger points with something like the dry needling, it'll decrease your headache regardless of which one you have. Also, manipulation or adjustment. There was a study in 2005 that showed that it was super helpful for cervicogenic headaches because it is that neck issue that's going on. Tension type, it wasn't really effective, but it had a little bit of help. And then it was actually as effective for migraines as medication, just basically cracking the neck. And then knowledge is also helpful. So if you're able to figure out what kind of headache you have, if you're able to maybe do a couple things for it and then seek the proper treatment for it, you could get them to go away and you're a lot more likely to keep them from recurring. So even if you have any of these different ones, there's definitely, since there's usually a mixed presentation they found, you likely have multiple ones. So for example, I talked about sensitive to light and noise. It could be either or. So by getting treated, you may actually have this kind despite the fact you think you have migraines. So the mixed presentation of the different ones, getting treated from multiple avenues, so the dry needling to work on the trigger points, or some massage to work on some of the tension, and then something like a manipulation can be helpful to hit all aspects of it. And then one thing, headaches are tough. There's not a ton you can do for yourself. It's not necessarily like a shoulder that you can do exercises or stretches. The real thing that you're going for with a headache and that you could make a change on would be those muscles back in there, and to put pressure on there, similar to like if you have somebody put their hands underneath of there, or you might dig in there yourself. The best way to do that is if you can take 2 lacrosse balls and put them in a sock, tape them up any kind of way you can get them in there, and you will lay on your back with those 2 on each side underneath of the skull, just like that. So then when you lay on your back on the ground, the pressure will be on there, and it kind of simulates a little bit of like a release, or try to relax those muscles, and the one that I showed you underneath of there. So whether you have this type of headache, this type, or this type, this could potentially be effective for 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes, what you would do to lay on there. And it could be helpful to try to release those a little bit. But there is a lot more that you can do with physical therapy and some of the treatments here that can be super effective relatively quickly, actually. So just kind of a breakdown of everything that's going on with headaches.